Central Illinois on the record, a primary preview, how voters in the land of Lincoln will impact the race for the White House. Plus, how a bill proposed in Springfield could make raising children more difficult for single mothers, how it would impact them financially, and how daily fantasy could be making a comeback in Illinois, the legislation that has the support of the gaming industry.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the record.
Welcome to Central Illinois on the record. I'm Paul Cicchini. Following his 2017 budget address, Governor Rauner makes a stop in Peoria to talk about education funding.
What we should do is dramatically increase overall support and put that money into lower income districts and more rural districts.
The governor met with students at Woodruff Career and Technical Center, promising to move state money into education. The Republican also wants to remove restrictions placed on certain districts, such as outsourcing drivers' education programs. Rauner says Illinois is the worst state in the country when it comes to school funding.
Whether they choose to go to a four-year college or not, every student in Illinois deserves a great career. And we need our school system to support our students.
Some education groups, like the Chicago Teachers Union, have criticized Rauner for hurting education by trying to break up unions, not paying teachers' pensions, and vetoing MAP grants. Now, school districts are also dealing with unfunded mandates and have been for years. State Senator Jason Barickman is trying to change that. The Republican is the chief sponsor of a bill that would relax some of those mandates by taking away the restriction on third-party contracting and giving districts the opportunity to opt out of things like physical education or driver's ed courses. Barickman says the bill would give control to districts.
I think school board members who are elected by their peers and their neighbors in their school district are the ones who can best decide what things they ought to provide to their students.
According to the governor's office, the legislation would save public schools more than $200 million. Now, Governor Rauner is also shedding light on MAP grants. He says he'll continue to veto any MAP grant legislation that's sent to him unless the proposals come with some type of reform. Rauner says he's proposed new ideas to fund MAP grants in public universities, but he's been met with opposition. He says funding the MAP grant program without change will bankrupt the state. Some students, however, well, they say without the grants, they may have to drop out of school. The fallout from the budget battle continues to have a ripple effect across Illinois. 3 state universities saw their credit ratings fall because of the budget fight. Moody's Investors Service downgraded the credit ratings of Eastern, Northern, and Northeastern universities. They aren't the only ones looking at a downgrade, though. Each of the public universities in Illinois has a negative outlook by Moody's due to a lack of funding or cash flow. The primary election in Illinois is 16 days away. In the past, it was common for the parties to have nominees by the time they make it to the land of Lincoln, but it doesn't appear that's going to happen in 2016. CIOTR's Hannah Hilliard explains that'll give Illinois a bigger role in the outcome this election season.
With less than a month until Illinois' presidential primary, here they come.
At some point, we head a little north to places like Michigan, Illinois, a little state, Ohio.
And with a competitive Democratic race,
I think we are going to pull off one of the great political upsets.
And a Republican primary with 5 candidates still contending.
The number they started with was very unusual, but that very quickly whittled itself down.
Illinois' primary election could carry some weight.
Some of the very early races were pushed back later in the calendar year. Illinois moved up a little bit, and now we found ourselves in sort of the perfect spot.
This is not the first time a relevant and competitive presidential primary race has made its way to the land of Lincoln. Back in 2008, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama duked it out. And more competition and the fact Illinois has an open primary means more voters heading to the polls.
Interest certainly should be a little bit higher this year, given that the outcome of the both parties' nominations is still up for grabs.
In addition to the presidential primary, there's also a Senate primary on both sides of the aisle, along with local races and referendums on the ballot. Again, the Illinois primary, March 15th. Well, a new poll shows Donald Trump with a commanding lead as we get closer to the March primary. The Paul Simon Public Policy Institute has Trump leading GOP hopefuls with 28%. Senators Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Ohio Governor John Kasich trail, but are within 1 percentage point of each other. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton leads Senator Bernie Sanders by almost 20%. The GOP poll had a margin of error of nearly 6%. The Democratic poll, a margin of error of about 5%. We'll have more on the Republican and Democratic presidential contests later in the show. Well, speaking of that race for Senate, Democratic candidate Andrea Zopp is challenging her opponent to another debate. Zopp was in the River City last week asking for Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth to debate her in Central Illinois. Zopp says the Duckworth campaign has denied several requests from groups in Peoria to debate downstate.
I'm running to represent the whole state, and that means I have to come and talk to voters across the state and hear what they have to say and hear what their issues are.
Now, we did reach out to Representative Duckworth's campaign. A spokesperson says, "We were pleased with the opportunity to participate in 3 substantive debates and are looking forward to spending the final 3 weeks of the campaign traveling around the state and talking directly with Illinois voters, including in Peoria." State Senator Napoleon Harris is also running for that Democratic nomination. Someone not worried about re-election? State Representative David Leach. A Republican is retiring at the end of his current term. While touring a museum in Peoria, Leach talked about the impact the budget is having on museums, colleges, and social services.
It is critically important that at some point in the near future, we begin to enact policies that enable us to have economic growth and grow our way out of this problem.
Leach does not expect much work to be done on the budget until after that primary in March. Now, single mothers in Illinois could soon have a much more difficult time getting financial help from the state. A new proposal would force moms to name the father on a birth certificate. As CIOTR's Kelsey Gibbs explains, if that doesn't happen, the assistance would be denied and the mother ineligible for financial support.
Her is now 25 years old, and she's now in school.
State assistance for low-income families have been a hot-button issue in the state. When parents and providers weren't rallying, lawmakers took center stage.
I am not interested in providing child care to people where you don't even know the paternity.
Back in September, Representative Jeannie Ives questioned the state's role in supporting single mothers who don't know who their child's father is.
You should have to have verifiable need, and that means you better know who the daddy is and whether or not he can afford that child.
Now, 5 months later, there's a bill to change the law. If a father is not listed on a newborn's birth certificate, the birth certificate will not get issued, leaving single mothers without access to state aid.
The purpose of the CCAP program is for these families to become independent and successful working families. If they're going to school to get their degree, they won't have to have assistance anymore.
The Teddy Bear Christian Child Development Center is a CCAP provider, and Director Penny Driver says she serves plenty of single parents.
The day, if this House bill passes and this becomes a law, how many of those children are going to be affected by this? What is going to happen to them?
Driver says the bill is ridiculous.
Most of the time in these situations, they are either the father, it could have been a rape case, could have been incest, could be the father's in jail.
The proposal does have an exception. The mother can go to court and have another family member sign the birth certificate and agree to accept financial responsibility for the child.
More than likely, that's already a low-income family. How are they going to be able to do that? They're not.
That's not all. The bill makes no exception for victims of rape or incest. Under current law, an unmarried father is not named on the birth certificate unless he signs a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. If passed, this bill would take immediate effect.
I believe the President's plan reflects the administration's ongoing goal to close Guantanamo Bay because of the ongoing problems it causes our country, particularly abroad, as a terrorist recruiting center.
President Obama on Tuesday calling for the closure of Guantanamo Bay. The plan comes 7 years after Mr. Obama made an Oval Office vow to permanently shutter the prison. The facility in Cuba has less than 100 prisoners remaining there. The plan involves transferring the bulk of remaining detainees to other countries and moving the rest, who cannot be transferred abroad because they're deemed too dangerous, to an as-yet determined detention facility in the United States. So will President Obama's next Supreme Court pick get a hearing before the president's successor is sworn into office? The president says he understands why Republicans are reluctant to go forward, but he's determined to find a nominee. Top Senate Republicans, however, are digging in their heels, saying they will not even hold hearings or meet with the president's nominee.
So the question is, who should make the decision? And my view, and I can now confidently say the view shared by virtually everybody in my conference, is that the nomination should be made by the president, the people elect, in the election that's underway right now.
I think it will be very difficult for Mr. McConnell to explain how, if the public concludes that this person is very well qualified, that the Senate should stand in the way simply for political reasons.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has shown no signs of backing down from his position. Last week, reports indicated Nevada's Republican Governor Brian Sandoval was a potential candidate. On Thursday, Sandoval asked he be withdrawn from consideration. Well, the Democrats head south. A look at how the primary played out in South Carolina. And fantasy gaming could be coming back to Illinois. They look at legislation supported by the industry. Winning a huge jackpot usually means a meeting with the media, but that could change. State law requires your name be released right now, but a proposed bill would allow winners the option of going public or remaining anonymous. The bill's sponsor says it's a privacy issue.
I don't want my name to show if I win. That's not a good idea what they do. If they, if they put the people's name in picture, that's not a good idea.
On the flip side, some store owners say when their store is mentioned with the winning ticket, they get a boost in business. Well, the fantasy sports industry is betting on a new bill that would bring back a popular game to Illinois. The Attorney General ruled last year daily fantasy gaming is illegal. CIOTR's Capitol Bureau Chief Matt Porter tells us how lawmakers intend to change that.
The Daily Fantasy Contest Act, which would effectively bring to Illinois safe, reliable, and regulated fantasy sports play.
Daily fantasy sports have rapidly become a multi-million-dollar industry. But is it gambling? Lawmakers introduced a bill to make the games 100% legal in Illinois.
We need certainty in this area. We need it now. We need to allow this innovative form of entertainment to grow here in the state of Illinois.
People in the industry call fantasy sports a game of skill.
The other thing I'd like to really point out too is fantasy sports games are games of skill. These are not games of chance.
The legal term is a loophole in federal law excluding skill games from gambling. Players see the games as both part chance and part strategy.
Yeah, to some extent that's what it is, but there is skill involved with it as well.
Attorney generals in Texas, New York, and Illinois all say the games constitute illegal gambling. Supporters say the bill will not just define fantasy as skill games, but include provisions to prevent abuse. The bill establishes an 18-year-old age requirement and asks companies to provide support for people who may become addicted.
But there is money involved, and that's why we're trying to be here to work with the legislator to put in some basic consumer protection measures to alleviate any concerns about that.
And with the bill, fantasy doubles down in Illinois.
The bill is in committee and could be heard at the beginning of April. Still to come, we're looking at the primary results from South Carolina and whether Hillary Clinton's so-called firewall held. But up next, Republicans debate how Cruz, Rubio, Kasich, and Carson tried to gain ground on Donald Trump.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
Presidential candidate Donald Trump dominated the Nevada Republican caucus Tuesday. He had the support of nearly 46% of GOP caucus goers in the state. His closest rivals, Senator Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, were far behind. And Trump didn't hesitate to celebrate the victory.
We won with young, we won with old, we won with highly educated, we won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
According to data from Kantar Media CMAG, Trump spent about $490,000 campaigning in Nevada, far less than the campaigns of his nearest rivals. Rubio's team, it spent $920,000 in the state. Cruz spent $790,000. In Houston, Marco Rubio was on fire Thursday night. For weeks, he's resisted taking on Donald Trump, but during the final GOP debate before Super Tuesday, Rubio delivered blow after blow to Trump. And, as Mary Maloney reports, the other candidates attempted to claim that spotlight.
Ted Cruz opened the GOP debate at ease in his home state.
Welcome to Texas.
Initially, the candidates played nice.
Marco, Donald, Ted, John, we will not solve any of these problems by trying to destroy each other.
America is an amazing country where a kid like me can grow up to run for president of the United States.
Cruz, John Kasich, Ben Carson, and Marco Rubio have one goal: stop Donald Trump. Rubio came out swinging.
You're the only person on the stage that's ever been fined for hiring people to work on your projects illegally. You hired some workers from Poland.
I'm the only one on the stage that's hired people. You haven't hired anybody.
At one point, Rubio turned the tables on Trump and clearly started to have fun.
You'll have many different plans. You'll have competition. You'll have so many different plans.
But now he's repeating himself.
No, I'm not repeating. No. You repeat
yourself every day.
I watched him, talking about repeating, I watched him repeat himself 5 times 4 weeks ago. And
I saw you repeat yourself 5 times 5 seconds ago.
I watched him.
Cruz took his own punch at Trump.
This is another issue on which Donald and I have sharp disagreements.
But Trump isn't taking the shots lightly.
I'm beating him awfully badly in the polls.
But you're not beating Hillary.
So
you're not beating Hillary.
Well, then if I can't beat her, you're really going to get killed, aren't you?
I'm Mary Maloney reporting.
The nominating contest now turns to the biggest day in the race for the White House Super Tuesday. 12 states will be voting or caucusing, with 595 GOP delegates up for grabs. The largest haul is in Texas, where 155 delegates are at stake. Still ahead, the police chief is out, how people in Hayworth are reacting to the news. But first, a primary in the Palmetto State. Who came out on top between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders?
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
Just as Senator Bernie Sanders seemed to be gaining momentum in his race against Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State picked up a win in Nevada. Now, as the presidential contest moved to South Carolina, the big question, will Clinton's so-called firewall hold?
Not just a win, a decisive win for Hillary Clinton in South Carolina. The campaign looking at South Carolina results as an indicator of how she may fare across multiple Southern contests on Super Tuesday. They hoped South Carolina would show strength among minority voters. Exit polls indicated African American voters accounted for more than 6 in 10 voters here in South Carolina. They will also be key in Southern Super Tuesday states like Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, and Virginia. Clinton now has wins in 3 of the first 4 contests, like Donald Trump in the Republican field. Sanders not yielding yet. He spent primary day away from the Palmetto State, first in Texas and then at an event in Minnesota, part of his Super Tuesday strategy. But Clinton with the big win and the momentum in the last contest before Super Tuesday. In Columbia, South Carolina, I'm Karen Kafa.
Democrats are also looking ahead to Super Tuesday when more than 1,000 delegates are up for grabs. Still to come, the police chief is gone. How locals in Hayworth are reacting. But first, super savings at the pump. How much low gas prices have impacted cities across central Illinois. Cities in McLean County are reaping the benefits of lower gas prices. With the cost of fuel under $2 a gallon, city transportation budgets are in better shape. Bloomington will see a savings of up to $615,000. McLean County is saving over $24,000. Overall, the Highway Department has seen a decrease each year for budgeted fuel purchases since 2014. The Administrative Services Director for the county says it's nice to catch a break on these costs.
If we continue to see these type of prices, we can start to use that for more maintenance type work, or we can actually start to, you still have to plan because our budget covers 2 winters.
McLean County says a lot of its fuel usage happens in the winter months, and the county hopes to continue to save on fuel prices in November and December of this year. Well, several members of the Hayworth community are disappointed after the Village Board of Trustees votes not to reinstate Chris Lane as Chief of Police. It happened at a special meeting last week. As CIOTR's Lindsay Harrison reports, Lane was fired the week prior by the town's acting mayor.
Hayworth's Village Hall was packed to capacity Tuesday night for a special meeting to discuss the future of the former Chief of Police.
This man gets my vote.
The meeting was called after Acting Mayor Todd Zaluka fired longtime Police Chief Chris Lane last week. Zaluka stated Lane presented a liability to the town and his performance was not meeting expectations. For legal reasons, Zaluka did not go into details, but did say that Lane gave false information to the town's liability insurance agency and made false statements to the press. Zaluka also said Lane received a 1% raise over the last 3 years and completed his required police chief training every year. The community spoke in favor of reinstating Lane for more than an hour.
So right now, I think the majority of the votes here are to see that Mr. Lane gets reinstated.
Keeping us safe, and he's a very responsible, respectful, trustful person.
But the board chose to vote against reinstating Lane.
Trustee Lambert?
No.
Trustee Barnwell?
No.
Trustee Wilson?
No.
I'm very, very upset with the decision. They thought he needed to be reprimanded. That's one step, but just out and out fire him.
Pretty disappointed. Real disappointed.
Lane says he's grateful for the huge showing of support he's received.
It's been overwhelming. It's been outstanding, and I couldn't ask for better support. The people of this village are just the best people.
We have other police officers.
The search is now underway for a replacement. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. Of course, you can stay in touch with us using social media, connect with WMBD and me on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag CIOTR, and we will see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WIZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.